looking in the mirrors and being,
hell yeah,
we are live. We've had a lot of those. Lisa's going through some allergies. So the way we're doing this trip and the tour is we house it the whole time.
Oh, right on. Okay.
Yeah, we have a website we use, but I'm not going to bring it up until they sponsor us. I'm making a pitch to them. Although I think they're going to deny the pitch because our podcast tends to get off. We've tried to tone it down. We're not like edgy people by nature, but she is Ukrainian. And so their thought process...
mostly wrong with everything I say.
So like it just within 10 minutes, something... I won't say racial gets said, but at least like ethnic gets brought up, and it just within. So I just feel like I try to pitch so formally to these companies. So I'm going to go to house sitters and be like, "Would you like us to write a travel blog for you?" And then in the first episode, they're going to be like, "You got to tone down the anti everything talk you're doing."
Shit. Now I'm nervous, Brian. Now I'm nervous.
Yeah. So what's your stance on Palestine and Israel? That's usually how I open up.
We open with that. Oh, okay, great.
Yeah.
I'm neither of those, so I usually back away slowly into the bushes like Homer Simpson.
Yeah,
that's
exactly.
That's how I do it. Yeah.
We were just talking about you know when people get engagement pictures done, and they have like you propose, like, and there's a surprise photographer.
Yeah.
When you're in like a remote location, what is that guy? Is he in the bush?
I've had friends who've been the photographer. I find it to be really. Are we recording? Yeah, I don't know how do you do that, by the way? Do you just start?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
This is all getting used.
Oh, okay. All right. So we are being okay. Very good. Yeah.
Somebody should clap their hands once. Just
all right. Well,
you got it. By the way, is this audio good for you guys? Can you hear?
It's nice.
It's perfect.
All right. Well, I started fiddling with it, so it might not be nice. Yeah, I think that's ridiculous and awful, and I'm not getting married.
You're never gonna get married?
I don't think so. No.
Why? When did you make that choice?
I don't know if it's just not like one decision. All of a sudden, I was like, nope, not doing it. I'm out. You know, not like that. I just kind of, the more I see it and I see all the money that people put into weddings and all that kind of stuff, I always just kind of.
Right.
So it's more about the wedding as a procedure rather than a woman of choice.
Yes, exactly. Yeah. I'm not opposed to sort of, spending my life with a woman. It's not that at all. It's just the whole idea. I'm just sort of, the older I get, the more I'm like, why is anyone doing that?
Yeah.
Well, you're going to rescue one woman from a very awkward moment at the beach with you, her, and a wrong guy just pacing back and forth.
Yeah, that's right. I'm all for awkward moments. That in life, there's many awkward moments as we can get is what I'm up for. Yeah.
That's what I do to most retail employees, service employees, relationships. That's most
Make
of
it as
life.
awkward as possible.
But yeah, I am. So you've had friends who take the photos because we were talking about like in remote locations, there just has to be one guy who's pretending to like. He's like, look at that bird over there.
Yeah.
Oh wow, look at that. Fucking gotcha. Or they hire like. Do you think they ever hire like an ex-Marine sniper?
Oh, I
in, like
hope
a
so.
ghillie suit, and like, he sees a 9-year-old in his head. He's like, I gotta get her out of there. I'm sorry, I take it back. Oh.
He's got this, and the thing is like going on bended knee, playing.
The eagle's in the roost.
Yeah, that's
I
right.
didn't know she was in the building.
Right. It sounds, I don't know. The whole thing to me is, I don't know. It just, I'm not opposed to romance either. It's not, I don't have an issue with that. It's sort of, I don't know. It just seemed that, and then the reveals, the
well, those
kind
are
of
ridiculous.
babe. Like, it all feels like the same thing to me. All these things that are like, hey world, look what we're doing. And it's like, maybe just do it for you.
Dude, baby culture has gotten ridiculous. I get that like having a baby's tough. And straight white male, I'm going to get crucified here. But first of all, a straight white male did get crucified a long time ago, and he did it for your sins. So why don't you calm down, everybody? Put your trust in God first. Second, the baby reveal thing's ridiculous to me.
He also got canceled, though, by the way.
He did get canceled pretty hard.
kind of the worst. He got the worst.
Worst cancellation. Yeah. His daddy didn't come to save him quick enough. I have a rich dad, so I get what that's like. Anyways,
oh, nice. Wow, you're just digging that hole.
That hole.
You're like,
we've got the followers for it, baby. Money's pouring in. I'm putting it all in Bitcoin. I just need Elon to make a stupid tweet, and I'm rich tomorrow.
I love that. Yeah.
What were we talking about? Yeah, that's right. I think. What were we talking about?
People getting on bended knee and
the baby
sniper
reveal
pictures.
When people go through baby life culture, it's something that's been happening since quite literally the dawn of time. You're not unique for having a child.
Yeah.
It happens all the time. And it's such a first world country thing where it's like, I'm a girl dad, I'm a boy dad, and then like 100 years ago you had 9 kids because 4 died because the water, was bad.
Sure.
And you needed people to work the farm. They didn't do a baby reveal. They didn't burn down a whole forest.
No.
Maybe they should have.
One of my favorite scenes in a movie, it will illustrate this, is what the hell's the name of the movie right now? It's The Patriot. That's the one with Mel Gibson. Yeah, there's a great scene where the soldiers come and they're burning. They're literally the house is on fire, and they took the one son who was the soldier, and they're like, and then Mel Gibson's there with like all of his kids at this point are like 12, 11, 6, 5, 2, these tiny little kids. And he goes to like the 11-year-old or 9-year-old girl and it's like, all right, I'm taking your brothers and we're going to go kill all these British soldiers. If we don't come back, go to Virginia to your aunts. They're in South Carolina.
Yeah.
They're like, go 2 states away, take your tiny little siblings and go to Virginia.
And back in the day, that's a 12-year journey.
Right, yeah, and they go running away. It's like kids are built different than they are today, is all I'm saying.
Yeah.
Like, back when it was like, yeah, we got kids so that they could take care of the farm. Yeah. Otherwise, we can't do it. You know what I mean? That's why.
Yeah.
So
I don't want to get
a little different today.
One of my boomer talk rants, but yeah, Gen Z just screwed, dude. All the news I get is from TikTok, and then I don't know if you're on TikTok. Do you post your stand-up to TikTok?
I do, yeah.
Yeah. So that's what they see. Their news source is also where they go to see us talk about how dating is weird.
Yeah.
That's pretty bad.
Yeah, I've never thought about that. So back in the day, I say back in the day, speaking of being an old bastard, I got my news here, I got my entertainment here, and it was all very sort of, compartmentalized. Now it's all just sort of mushed together. I hadn't really thought about that before.
They've done studies. They show like the
Interesting.
Gen Z's attention span and like retention of information is the worst it's ever been polled. And they have sex less than any polled.
Yeah.
generation.
I heard that actually somewhat recently, and I had the same reaction. I was like, oh, wow, what is, I didn't, dive into it, but I was like, there's something obviously going on there. I have to assume it's interaction. I mean, I don't think we're even seeing effects of COVID in a couple of years. I think there's a lot of problems going to be coming from that.
I think it definitely worked somehow. Like people less and less want to go and meet other people and talk to people. And but like what scares me the most with the information and the way that the kids receive information is, if you don't store enough and like all your little info bits are that small or that big. Then how are you able to critically think and make decisions for yourself if there is no chain between anything, like you don't dive into any single topic to make a choice? So then it kind of becomes like this mass of humans who are easily directed to anything, any thread, whatever it's called. And then they just kind of follow it blindly. So that's, I think, the scariest part about TikTok and, that kind of screen version of studying.
I also think it just to kind of go along with that, and this just me shooting from the hip here. I'm like, getting all your information from this tiny little thing. Is there an effect on your brain from this to reading a book to watching a huge movie screen to literally being walking down the street and on the job train? Is this affecting like how we retain information and what we do with that information later? I have to assume that there's some impact from that.
100%.
And again, it's all the small little bits of information that you get, and how do you put all that together for a dissertation? What kid comes out with some kind of a dissertation on anything? Well, here's how I feel about this particular topic. I know 1,000 tiny little bits of things, but tying all that together with some cohesive broad understanding of that probably is more challenging. I think that's a safe assumption to make.
That's a really good point. Yeah, because a novel too, or like a text. We're trying to do this Civil War audiobook. I'll get into that in a second. It's 40 hours of audiobook. So I can't even imagine.
That's a lot of hours. And I'm an audiobook fan. That's a lot of hours.
Dude, I can't even imagine the tome that this thing would be on paper. It would weigh down the car. But I've done that with, if you see a million different, like, it's like the Wikipedia rabbit holes I go down, and then I just forget everything that was there. I'm also not good with dates or anything.
Sure. That's fair.
I forget all of it. Plus, TikTok's a horny place. The internet's a horny place. It's hard to, you might go there to try to learn, and then 10 seconds later, there's just the hottest person you've ever seen. And it's always like a goofy situation. I'm not on TikTok, but I've seen websites where they like lampoon them and show the awkward ones. And it's like 12 million views.
Yeah.
And it's just like some woman bending over to grab an orange to like a silly song. And then there's 12 million views, and then a million guys in India being like, I would love to meet you, please. Like, thinking that they're actually speaking directly to him. Or there's always like
He did the accent. He did the accent. I'm so used to talking to him because on our podcast, he's on a mic and he's not, and I just realized it.
Oh, okay.
Brian, sorry.
Thank you. Brian did the accent. He voiced over
that
me,
was
right?
Brian. Did the
Brian, will you calm down, dude?
Gosh, man.
This is 2023, dude. I know we're in North Carolina. Jesus
That's really
Christ,
funny. I'm so used to doing that.
Dude, the Civil War book is so funny because we were both. I'm trying to like brush it. We're doing this trip. We're going through West Virginia at the time because I'm from Cleveland, so we're going from Ohio through West Virginia, and we're like, She doesn't know a bunch of American history, and mine is parsed. So I'm like, let's figure it out. Because every time I'm trying to learn American histoy, I'm watching the reel, and then the chick with the big titties is picking up an orange. She's like, whoops. And I'm like, that orange looks slippery. Whoa. Uh-oh.
It is distracting. I'm not going to say it's not.
Or it's like, that's actually a TikTok trend I've heard about where, like, because kids can't retain information, they, like, will have an article title over somebody like playing a video game or to like a chick dancing because their brains are just like, they're like, I can't focus.
You know, I actually read a study that kids retain much more information if they're listening to a very loud rock music, like anything very distracting. They, in the end, maybe they don't feel much focus at the time, but in the end, they retain much more information than listening to classical music, which surprised me.
Right. I heard a professor, he told me years ago, he said, when you're studying, play something. And he said it had something to do with having one specific thing to block out as opposed to the sounds of the world. You know, paper rattling over here, your mom's barking outside, the wind's blowing, all this stuff, all those distractions could potentially be worse, and to focus on music or something like that is one thing you can block out.
I play
interesting.
I play movie soundtracks.
Really?
And I write, and I have to do them to select my mood. I was recently playing the soundtrack to the movie.
You sound like a Gen Z, to be honest.
Oh, come on.
After saying that.
No, I'm not playing the soundtrack to Euphoria, dude. I was playing the soundtrack to the movie The King with Timothée Chalamet.
Yeah.
So the whole time I'm like, I could do this. I could be a king. And then I like walk around the streets with this look in my eyes like, you better watch it. I'm on my way to stop a revolt. That's how I get through my day. I love intense.
Did you see that movie?
Yeah, it's fantastic.
It's a really good movie. Yeah,
I've seen it twice.
That ending is like, whew.
Dude, the fight scenes when they're like in full armor fighting in the mud, so claustrophobic.
Yeah, totally.
Also built different. Prince Philip was like 14 when he did it.
Right.
Now 14-year-olds are looking at big titties on TikTok because they're cool as shit.
I do the name dropping thing. I worked with Timothée Chalamet. They did Homeland here in Charlotte, so I was the location manager on a couple seasons, and he was dating the daughter of the soldier in the story. Yeah.
Was he a nice guy?
Yeah, he was actually. I mean, our interaction was fairly limited, but nice enough. They're all, what were they, 14, 15, 16.
Still hot teens.
Running around.
Already hot.
Running around on a film set. So, they were fun. But it was cool. It was fun to see later. You'd be like, oh my God, that guy's, he's literally one of the biggest stars in the world right now. Yeah.
I really like the films he's in. One of my favorite films of last year was Bones and All. It was fantastic. I don't know if you saw it. It's about him being a cannibal. Love Dune. Wow. I'm a big Dune guy.
Yeah, Dune was really good.
Beautiful Boy was very good. Here's my problem with Timothée Chalamet. He changed what hot guys are. And I'm always a few years behind hot guy trends. Like growing up, it was like you got to be like tough. You got to like lift weights, you get cool tattoos. That's a lifetime commitment that I got on my body.
Right.
Then that fucking asshole came along. He weighs 47 pounds. He looks like Kate Moss.
Look at you. Look at him. Short guy. We had half of a summer. We had August.
We literally did.
And part of September. That's all we got.
The fuck happened to us?
Come on, man.
That was such a and now it's just him sickly. He looks like he has tuberculosis. He looks like the hottest guy in 1857 in Victorian England.
He just looks really hungry.
He looks like, you remember back in the day where like the treatment for things is you just had to get air?
He's like, he's gorgeous. He's a gorgeous man.
You know, I never had it for Timothy Chalamet.
Okay.
Who's your hot celebrity crush?
I don't have one.
I've never had one either. But what's your like? If you saw someone in a film, what's like the type of man you see in a film? You're like, oh, that's
Bruce Willis.
What the fuck?
Wow, I didn't see that coming either.
You know he has dementia, right?
Right.
I'm serious. He has dementia.
Yeah.
Bruce Willis at the
now,
time
or
of the 1995. Yeah, like Die Hard and what's the Tarantino film, The Pulp Fiction.
Yeah. Right. Okay.
All right.
Him in the blue jeans,
it's a man.
and like a tight shirt.
That's a very masculine.
Yeah.
That tracks.
Okay.
She's Ukrainian. Everyone there just has one tank top. They have nothing else to wear. So,
The wife beater.
well, I mean, you don't need to talk about them like that. But yeah. That's just the local town drunk.
Yeah.
The story she has about growing up there, it's so funny because they're always very cute and earnest, but they get backwards so fast.
Oh no.
They're not like sinister. It's just a very different place. She has this game. I can't get over this. She described gleefully on one of our episodes, and I keep having to go back over this game they would play. This is the game they would play.
Okay.
Her and her other like 5-year-old children friends would collect glass beer bottles from the trash. This is a game.
From every apartment.
Because everyone threw stuff away there. They were not litter bugs in Ukraine, apparently.
That's right.
So they dropped them on the floor of the
Had
apartments.
it all.
So she would pick them up. This is a game. They'd grab glass bottles, empty beer bottles. And then I made a joke about how, because something about liquor. And she was like, well, no, because usually you drink them out of the 2-liter. And I was like, the 2-liter? She's like, yeah, they drink beer out of a 2-liter bottle.
That's true.
A 2-liter plastic bottle, which they also refill, which is not good for you.
And it doesn't last very long. You know, you would think like if you buy a 2-liter bottle, it's to have for the whole week or something, a day, gone.
See, let's back up on that. That's a personal choice. A 2-liter bottle can absolutely last you a week. It could last you a month. It's your choice to make it last a day.
But nobody does. I think that was the lesson.
God damn.
You usually go to school. It's like 9 a.m. and you see a guy on the bus stop just finishing the second one already.
Is he getting on the bus?
No, he's not getting on any bus at this point.
It's just the
He's
bench?
staying there for some time.
Well, at least he has he's thinking about it.
Yeah.
So they collect the glass bottles. Then they find an old woman on the street.
Okay. Yeah.
Sitting on
it's getting squirrely, but okay, got it.
Yeah, old woman on the street.
Because there's always one.
There's Ukraine. Yeah. They just get left to their own devices, and their devices are collecting glass beer bottles from packs of soot-stained, shoeless children, like a Charles Dickens novel.
Yeah, I was gonna say street urchins. They have.
It really is. Your childhood was a Charles Dickens novel without the charm. So they drop the glass bottles at the old woman's blanket. She pays them a fake currency called a grogna, which is not real.
That's totally made up. There's no way a grogna is a real.
No, that's what the hobbits use.
Yeah.
A grogna, and then they flee, and then they get enough to buy a filled bottle of Coca-Cola.
That woman's going to do magic with that of some kind? Is there a curse?
Oh, no, here's what she does.
The big truck comes.
The big truck comes. Exactly how she describes it. The big truck comes.
That's an American name of something. Like two guys in a truck.
Exactly.
The big truck is its own thing. Yeah.
So the big truck comes, and then the old woman gives the collected bottles from the urchins to the big truck.
Yeah.
And what happens to them then?
It's like recycling the old ways.
Okay.
Right.
It's a proper, recycling with a face to it.
Multiple faces of children that should be in school. Yeah, that's the faces of there's a recycling program.
I gotta say, I hear a very sound economy right there. It's what I say. There's labor, pay for the labor. There's a middleman who happens to be an old Ukrainian woman on a blanket for some reason.
Yeah.
And then the big truck.
And it isn't outsourced, which is good.
That's right.
I did make a comparison because in Cleveland,
it's a pyramid scheme, actually.
It kind of. Well, that's the thing is, I was like, so you traded in the glass bottles to buy one glass bottle, and then But
then every child brings 3 more friends.
It's a middle market. It's
Yep.
a mid-level marketing scheme.
Yeah.
Yeah, it is
Yeah.
a pyramid scheme.
Ponzi.
Yeah,
That's Ukraine started the Ponzi scheme. Nice.
on a pretty low scale.
Actually, there was a guy in Soviet Union, Mavrodi, who started a Ponzi scheme called
you.
MLM, M&M, I don't remember. And, the whole Soviet Union brought him the money. And some of them actually managed, it was in the 90s, right? Pre-fall, actually not in the 90s, late 80s, pre-fall of the Union.
Okay.
And then, of course, it crashed and he went to jail. But he's like this guy, he's a mathematician. He's this guy in a tracksuit, just kind of doing his thing and big glasses and like long hair. And then he makes a statement that he didn't do it to get rich. He did it to show everybody the dollar pyramid. Because, the union was kind of crashing. The foreign goods already started coming in, and he did it apparently to educate the population and let them learn on their own mistakes.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
So that's one of those classic
That's like gangster mathematician shit right there,
Yeah.
man.
Yep.
That's not everywhere. Like that's a niche. That's a niche thing. That's impressive.
Yep.
Awesome.
He also sounds like he made a huge mistake and then was like, "Ha, I got you. This is actually all a prank. Whoa! Please don't shoot me in the head."
Yes, I exposed this thing that could happen. That's awesome.
Can you tell us about Charlotte comedy? Because that is why we travel. We try to learn about.
Oh,
How long
right.
have you been in Charlotte?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. Hard left turn. We went from Ukraine and Russia to Charlotte.
Well,
which
soon
is-
enough, Ukraine will be the 52nd state. So.
Yeah. Well, we've spent enough money there. So the
Yeah,
idea.
she
Yeah.
knows that, right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
She has no hope.
I'm okay. I'm fine with it.
Yeah.
That's all right. We'll take it. Yeah, Charlotte is very much not like Ukraine. It's funny you say it. Tell me the name of your podcast again.
Insert town.
Insert town here.
Yeah.
So I always, when people visit or come through, family or friends, whatever it is, I say Charlotte is it's a big small town is what it is. We've got 25, 30 square blocks of city, I guess I'll call it, and then everything outside of that is like city suburbs. It is growing. There's a place called South End where it's essentially the city is kind of growing south, so it's getting longer, and there's definitely skyscrapers are going up. But the city is really kind of a smallish town. There's different neighborhoods that have their own personalities around that, and as you go beyond that, you get into essentially rural land. So that's kind of the topography of kind of the area and kind of the layout of the city. And I think the comedy scene, I think, is probably not dissimilar to that size of a city, right? So we've got one main club, which is the Comedy Zone. This is sort of their sort of flagship club. And we can talk that they've sort of changed a little bit. There's a couple comedy zones, but they've sort of bought into East Coast entertainment, which they do a lot of. They do like music venues, and they wanted to get involved in comedy, so now they have that. So what I was getting at was the scene is essentially, you have this one club, and then you have all these sort of smaller satellite sort of rooms at breweries and things like that. So the scene is not especially big, but I would say it's pretty active. I think there's a lot of comics here again that match the size of the city. And varying degrees of skill level and experience. I mean, there's guys who came out of Charlotte, like Joe Zimmerman. He's a Charlotte guy. I think he would call himself a Charlotte guy. He's a Morgantown, West Virginia, but he really, I think, cut his teeth in comedy here. Guys like Ryan Davis, who's kind of blowing up and killing it. Christian Johnson, another young guy, is here. Paul Hooper. We've got guys who've come from here, men and women who come from here, who are doing very well outside, and but we're still a relatively small scene. I think when you tie Charlotte into Greensboro, which is hour and a half away, and Durham and Raleigh, which is 2.5 hours away, you start to North Carolina as a scene. I think is pretty great, actually. I think it's great. I think Charlotte is relatively small, like I said, with the one club, which is my favorite club in the country. There's a lot of opportunities. There's room. There's a lot of room here to grow and to be a good comic. If you want to come and watch the best comics in the country or in the world coming through, Comedy Zone's right here. The city has a bunch of theaters where big acts come through. We've got the festival every year that brings in some big acts. So yeah, it's a good scene. It's a fun smallish scene. So you can make waves in a place like this.
How long have you been doing comedy in Charlotte?
May will be 10 years.
So did you start here?
I did, yeah. Yep.
And you're from Charlotte?
No, I'm from Pennsylvania, so I moved down here 2002. And I was so I work in film production, and that's kind of why I came down. My brothers were here and said, "Hey, try out in this city kind of thing." And I came down because I heard they did some production here. I'd lost my job. I came down, so I've been working in film for a while. And as a screenwriter, which has been my ultimate goal, I wanted to be a better joke writer in some of the things that I was writing. And then knowing the Comedy Zone was here, I'd been there and seen shows. They taught a class, so I'm a product of a comedy class, which not a lot of people. It's 50-50. People think that's bullshit. Some people think it's great. I'm of the opinion to say, why would I not take advantage of every way to learn about anything? You know what I mean? I approach things from an academic sort of perspective, and that's what I do with stand-up. And a couple classes in, I was like, oh shit, this is fun. Like, I had no idea the performance side of it would be as fun as it is. And so I kept the writing up, and now I'm like inching out of film work because this is all I want to do. So,
what's your writing style like? Because if you're analytical, and I went when I had gotten back into stand up, I bought a couple books that were more process oriented. Given the idea of like, there's that thought process of comedians who kind of let things happen to them and hope to make something funny out of it, but if late night hires you, you need to make 100 jokes. You better sit there and make 100 jokes.
Yeah, I'm a writer. I'm a sit down and write. Now, I as far as a process is, I'm constantly texting myself funny things or just this idea, anything that I read. I do love to take, weird facts or weird, not news articles, but weird things that happen that you hear. Scientists, that worm, that was 46,000-year-old worm, they melted it or whatever. They melted the ice, and the thing came alive. And it immediately started making babies like it was Nick Cannon. Like, it was crazy. Like, that's a story to me where I'm like, well, I got to talk about that. That shit's funny.
That is funny because I love that. That would, if you unfroze me after 46 years, I'd be like, I gotta come. Oh, Jesus Christ. For 46,000 years, you're like,
yeah. So did the worm, my friend. So did the worm.
Oh!
Yeah, so that's crazy. Like, to me, that's terrifying. And that is there's so many sides of that are, very funny and comedic. Yep. And I'll take that, but then also take sort of personal experiences. So I'm texting myself ideas constantly. That turns into a Word doc where I will sit and write, and I'll work on jokes for a pretty long time. Depends on, sometimes they happen quick, and then you develop a, kind of from stage, more things come up. But yeah, I'm a sit and write. I'm somewhat of a word for word. I want it to come out right. I like the structure. I like the setup punch of stand-up. Makes a lot of sense to me. I don't know if I'm the funniest sort of person standing around with everybody. I don't think I'm. I always said, like, growing up, I was entertaining. I don't know if I was the funniest one. I got a lot of funny friends. So, however, I think that sort of being a writer and somewhat of a performer anyway, doing other things, whether it's music or acting or anything like that, so I kind of put those two things together, performance and writing.
Do you think you'll stay in Charlotte for as long as your career goes? I
don't know if you need to leave anymore. If I think the idea of going to New York and LA I definitely think that is a path to go and be successful in the way things are now. But I think the social media situation is stronger and more relevant now than it's ever been. I mean, I was going to film festivals years ago, and people were telling us, if you're doing anything that's longer than 4 minutes, you're a dinosaur. And this is like 10 years ago, longer than that we were out there. Actually, it was in L.A. And then I went and I did the Burbank Comedy Festival, and I did all of the panels, and it was, people who were, casting directors and that were on there, and they were like, yeah, get a social media presence. If you don't have it.
It seems that now it's just with about anything you do. Doesn't matter. You can, run an offline little, bookstore. You still need to have.
Gotta have it.
You need to have it.
Yeah, and I don't know how I feel about whether or not that's a good thing or a bad thing or whatever it might be. I think you're seeing probably the whole spectrum of, this is someone who's not good enough at this, but they're good at social media and marketing, and they're taking advantage of that. To here's somebody that I know who is an amazing comic who refuses to do it and has no interest in doing it, and you're like, that guy's going to lose to the person who's good at social media. For better or worse, that's the reality. So again, I don't know how I feel about it. I feel like I like to think I'm pretty good at both, but I don't have 100,000 followers. I don't know how to do that, and I don't think anyone really does. That's the other side of this. I think there's some people who can, depending on what you're doing, how do you get to be that person and get the clicks or whatever, however you want to sort of put that. Like, I think some people have stumbled onto some stuff. No matter who it is, like, they need that one thing to blow up and get 1 million hits, or no one's going to know who they are. And nobody can tell me that they know which one's going to do that. No one can predict which one is going to do that. You can say that you know how to do it. Well, here's how you become successful. No, you need something to blow up. You still need lightning to strike. I haven't seen anyone be able to do that, at least from the performance side, as a comic or a band or something like that. That's my take. I think we're all, nothing has changed in terms of, we're all, as performers, comics in particular, we're trying to get to the highest part of the mountain with the longest rod to stick up in the air for lightning to hit. Mm-hmm. And I see people who are not prepared for when the lightning strikes. And then you see them come through town here, and they sell the place out on a Wednesday night. They got 400 people in there who are losing their minds, and then you never see them again because their show wasn't good and they weren't prepared for what live performance is. And also, they could be good at that, but then they never developed the skill to then evolve or adapt or just keep writing and change sort of what they're doing for the next time around, or even to know that they have to change for the next time around. I almost don't, anyone who comes through, almost very few times do I see people come through again.
Really?
Yeah, only a few people. Like a good example of someone who I think is actually an excellent comic and who just knows how to do all this stuff. Joe Dombrowski, do you know him? He's up in Seattle.
Yeah, I do.
Mr. D. Dombrowski, he's a teacher.
Yes.
And he's an excellent comedian. He's an incredibly funny person, just standing around, hanging out. And he's just really, really good on social media. He has this brand that people absolutely flock to, and he has this niche of being a teacher. The teacher thing is a guy in town who's a good friend of mine, Jonathan Williams. He just signed on with the Board Teachers Tour. That is such a niche thing, because how many teachers are there in the country? Because it's a friggin' lot. How many parents are there have kids? So their opinions of teachers and the education system is forefront in their mind, so they have very strong opinions about it. So you get real hot people on there, people who love what you're doing. Like that kind of thing, like that is from what I've seen, that's one of the hottest things right now is teachers, and that is a talking point or a premise in terms of stand-up. Joe's just very, very good at it. Jonathan's good at it. Board Teachers Tour. It's all over the country. They're selling out, big theaters and stuff. It's fascinating. One of my biggest problems is I don't know if I have a niche right now. I don't really, I'm a short person. I'm like, is that enough for anyone to come watch my shit? It's like, no, nobody wants to see that. So anyway, so for me, it's just about being really, really funny as much as possible. How funny can I be? How funny can I make my videos about my life and my world? That's what I'm doing.
You're working on being a real comedian. That's the worst part.
Yeah. Yeah, it's the most fun thing in the world to do, though. So I'm like, if my success isn't sort of, Kevin Hart, which I'm not sure I really want to be that anyway. I want to be able to do this, forever. And
the
do
short
it
man's
well.
pariah.
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. I'm having a great time doing this. It is the most fun thing in the world to do. Stand-up comedy. I don't think anything compares with it. I've had a few sort of eureka moments, and this is the most recent and the best one so far. Great.
I agree. That's kind of why, a reason I was so excited for this tour and the last one I did. I won't go to my life story, but really I hadn't gotten back into stand-up until a little over a year ago. And I had been so far removed from the scene, I went to New York and got back into it. And the landscape had changed 180 since I was in it. So when social media was first frustration, because I was like, well, I don't have 100,000 followers. And you see people who within 6 months of the first open mic have 20,000 because they're big on TikTok.
Yeah.
And there is...
It's going to be frustrating.
It is. And, especially because the formula really is if you have one quip you can do, and I've shown her this, a couple people I know, basically every single day they post one reel on Instagram and one on TikTok. It's about 30 seconds every day, and that consistency builds it. And then, but I hear the same thing. Then they get 30 minutes, and they get killed because they haven't worked on stand-up.
They don't know what they're doing. They don't.
No.
It's
a different world.
Wild. It's a different.
It's
world.
not a 30-second quick clip because people's brains are fried and that's all they can digest. And no disrespect to them. However you get noticed, you get noticed.
And also, I think it's the lifestyle is not easy.
No,
if you're a TikTok person, you're making thousands and thousands of dollars a month. Just keep doing that.
I know people who stand-up obviously got sexy. I mean, I jumped back into a year, but COVID made it sexy and social media made it sexy. Mm-hmm. So. I was thinking about that when you did the stand-up class. There's people in New York who do stand-up classes just so they have the background because the Comedy Cellar does one. So you can have the Village Underground background. Like, yes, after your first open mic, you were doing the Village Underground. Definitely not a bringer. Yeah. But now there's so many people that it's kind of like all the crowd work on social media and all the skits and stuff. And that's where it's moved.
I kind of have a little bit of an issue with the crowd work stuff. And I understand why they do it, but it's sort of... It's just a little funny. It's like you don't want to burn your material, right? Isn't that what they always say?
Well, and here's the thing. If you're Mark Norman, you can limit burning your material. If you're an open micer, nobody's coming to your show and being like, I heard that joke last month.
Oh,
like,
my God.
Dude, I've gone on my own little tour and I burned my material. I have 15 minutes of my actual stand-up on Instagram and TikTok because I don't care because no one's ever going to go.
Yeah, right.
And you know what? When people go to see Jim Gaffigan, you know what they ask for? The Hot Pocket joke.
Yeah, right.
If you go to see Eagles, you still want to hear Hotel California.
If you're afraid of your one joke that's any good being out there, you write another one, man.
People don't
that's
write.
The part. That's the part of it blows my mind. They're like, well, you don't get to burn your material. It's like I'm always writing, and this is a motivation to continue to write because if I'm just what am I going to do? Just do crowd work bullshit to get people to come to my shows? It's like get out, put material.
There's so many. I mean, for one, it's the writing. I've noticed, like the comics I made friends with, we always wrote a ton. My problem is throwing out too much material. And when I did that show with Jason, it was my first 30, and I was going over. And then I threw most of that out because I just get bored with my material and I want to get better. Yeah. The crowd work's also usually like.
I don't know if I throw it out, but I get moving on.
I move on too fast, but. Yeah. I mean, crowd work. The crowd work I have jokes ready for it. I'm never waiting, and I've seen that because then people see the clips, and then they'll be like, "Oh, you guys meet on the apps? Where are you from?" They're like Minnesota, and they're like, "That's cold," and then they like move to the next year. They don't have a joke for it, or it just becomes insulting, and that bothers me more than anything.
Totally.
She's Heard the Strand is insulting. First of all, again, if you're Mark Norman, you can kind of do whatever you want to the audience. You're one of the greatest that's doing it right now. If you're just a person, yeah. And they came to see you, right?
Right.
If they paid a lot of money to see you, still I'm a little iffy. But if they went to your show and you're Big J, you're Jordan Jensen, they're like, I know, I'm getting crowd work out of this. Okay, cool. But if you're not, and you're like on a showcase, and you come in and you do your thing, and you're like, your jacket does look dumb. I'm like, that person paid $25 to see you to do your hack shit. Like, write a joke. I thought you were about to say something about
I was about to say something similar.
Yeah.
Because, again, what I was noticing is that the crowd work is rarely funny at all. It's mostly like, what's your name, you asshole? Like, that's it. That's the joke.
That is actually hilarious. That was a very funny joke. I really want you to do an open mic.
Yeah. Oh, no. No.
That's your jacket, asshole?
Yeah.
That's so funny.
Hello, what is your name? You suck. Everyone would be like, pretty good.
All right, not bad. I saw that. That's good.
And I think the crowd work thing blows up too much on social media because viewers who don't know stand-up think that it's like this clever riff. Yeah. And what they don't see is the millions of times that amateur comic bombed to get them to this one time where it would be like, oh, comedian finds somebody cheating on their boyfriend? Like, you're like, oh, God.
Yeah, the clickbait of it all. Listen, I can be I'm a little cynical sometimes. Not all the time. I can be. Brian's looking at me funny over there. I can be. So I'm not someone to be like, you know what, man, if that's what you're doing, like, good for you. But here's what I know is that I spend a lot of time writing jokes. That's what I do, and I'm going to make it so that I can hold my joke up to with any other comic that I am performing with. I'm never going to need a crowd work, bullshit to make me feel good about doing the stand-up that I'm doing. My show is going to be well written. I'm here to entertain the crowd, not in reverse. And I think a lot of times they need the crowd to make it entertaining. It's like, no, they paid to see you, not to see you bullshit with them. And I also know there's other comics who are just crowd work comics, and I'm not going to remember the guy's name. He was in Charlotte a few weeks ago, and he does 100% crowd work. Moshe Kasher is kind of like that. Mm-hmm. But this guy's like literally brings no material and goes into the crowd. He was phenomenal. The guy was fantastic. I was like, that's his thing. That's his niche. Is it niche or niche? God damn.
I say niche.
Niche. All right. I'm always up with it. Quiche. Niche. Kiwi. The guy was fantastic. So I'm not in any way like insulting the way that guy does his show or whatever. I think it's to people where it's a little bit of, I don't want to burn my material. Well, write more. Yeah. Don't be an asshole to the crowd, which I'm with you. I hate that. Yep. I think that's kind of the worst thing to do. It's like, be clever. Don't be an asshole. Like, I don't know. People are there to be entertained. I don't know.
Yeah, and then also if your joke bombs, they'll be like, "Oh, that was too much for you." It's like, no, it wasn't funny.
Right.
It bombed because you're not funny. It was poorly written.
A lot of pet peeves in that world right there.
But
for me.
Yeah, I won't do boomer complainer hour. I think with what I've So anyway, I went to New York and I was back into it. And I was like, well, how do I? I'm 31. I'll be 32 in November. I was in business for a long time. I did a lot of other different things. I have a lot of good friends all over the country. I'm very grateful to have. I've lived all over. The point being is New York wasn't my end-all, be-all. I wanted to see where is comedy at. And that is what I discovered is you don't need to be in New York anymore. Obviously, It's one of the places you can get to be the best. I was very grateful. I did a year there.
Yeah.
But then when I traveled, I was like, I love this so much more. And I don't want to live there for the rest of my life. So being able to do it in smaller cities, like a place like Charlotte could be another one that blows up. Social media does help it blow up. Sure. Obviously, you've got to perform with some pretty massive names, and those opportunities could be harder to come by because there's just so many people to comb through. And you're connected with a great club here. And as you said with the TikTok stuff, like when you're in a local scene and you're talking to a club, the club knows if you're a good stand-up comedian. That's what they know.
Right.
They don't care as much about your social media presence. Sure, if you're a touring headliner, okay, how are you going to sell tickets? Mm-hmm. Which is also a minor pet peeve because I'm like, isn't that supposed to be the club's job? But then but at the same time, I know you got to pull people in. But you've developed a really great community here, and then you'll be able to tour, and you'll also live somewhere that you enjoy living. That's what I want.
Yeah, I think there's something to be said. New York as a sort of destination for stand-up totally makes sense to me. If you have one specific thing you're trying to do, I think. One is, listen, you're getting 3 minutes there, man. These guys are rapid fire. They're learning how to really, really sharpen that blade, right? Yeah. Like that makes sense to me. And if you want to get, you're right in the middle of it. It's like being in LA. You're right in the middle. You got late night shows are there. The people who book those shows are there. So that makes sense to me. But I also know some guys, and this was in LA, I had a similar experience. This guy was at one of the festivals, and he's a fantastic comic. Well, he had to go do a club somewhere in Oregon or wherever. I can't remember where he was going, and he was literally terrified because he had to do 30 minutes. And he's like, I got 10, 12, 15, like that I feel real, that's like rushing. I'm like, and he was worried. So he's like, I don't ever get to stretch my legs and do that amount of time.
Yep.
And I'm being here. I'm closing shows. I'm headlining more now than I have, and I'm doing 45 minutes in an hour. And there's just a lot of comics I think in New York who just I'm not saying that I'm better than a New York comic. I don't mean to say any of that. I'm saying the opportunities here allow me to stretch my legs and to tour all over the place. Whereas it feels like they're doing these really, really short sets, and that's probably too broad strokes to put all of New York comics into that. But kind of to your point, I'm getting opportunities here.
The aspect about time is spot on. That was part of the reason I did the original No Sleep tour. Was it's about getting time. You can wander into a new city and do 15 like it's nothing.
Yeah.
Or you can get paid a few $100 to do 30. And it's not any disrespect to New York. It's just obviously everyone goes there to do comedy, and there's a lot of great comics.
Right. There's a lot of great comics. Every time I go to a different place and I'm performing, I'm running into somebody who's really good. I kind of have that moment too. It's like, ooh, kind of like, what are you doing here? and I need to get that out of my head. It's like, no, it's you can be this, you can be it anywhere now. The world's gotten really small in that respect. The other thing about Charlotte too that I love is that we're 4 hours from Atlanta. We're I think 6 hours from Nashville. Richmond has a scene up in Virginia. I think at Wilmington's at the coast. Charleston's about 3.5 hours away. There's a lot of comedy around us here in the Southeast that, Nashville in particular is like that scene is blowing up right now. They got celebrity comics living there, and it's just a really great scene. They have Zanies is a fantastic club.
Yeah, I'm reaching out to them in a few days.
Yeah,
I know somebody there.
Yeah, it's so again for me, it's more and more. I'm like, I don't really necessarily need to go to New York. That the drive to do that. I'm really close with my family, and they all essentially live here too. So I'm kind of grateful for that because I can still do this and be close to them. So I don't know. I love Charlotte for all those reasons. It's a good city for it.
What do you think, Lisa? What do you think about Charlotte so far?
The first few days we were here, I really enjoyed it. I think all the small interactions we had with people, just very open and warm. It's rare.
Sure. And this is a city too that I don't know if you've picked up on this yet. It's not the most southern city. There's a lot of transplants here. This is like we're like top 5 fastest growing cities for like 10 years in a row or something like that. And so we're getting a lot of people from the north are coming down. So if you're, not that we don't have southern hospitality, but I think it's not the most southern sort of city that you're ever going to be in. It's pretty new. It's it's a lot of glass and steel in the not a lot of history, which is a little bit of a bummer. Don't get me wrong about that, especially as a location manager. It's kind of a bummer, but it is a new young city. Yeah. If you're 25. I don't know why you're not moving to Charlotte. I mean, apparently that's the hot spot. 25 to 30 is like they're crushing right now.
North Carolina is ever since COVID. I know 1 million people from up north who moved to Tennessee and North Carolina, and I've lived in Tennessee and Alabama, so I don't even know if I consider North Carolina the South. I figured if I had a show here, I'd open and ask and see who says what. But no, I could see all the hot millennials.
This is all of North Carolina coming to get you right now for saying that. They're like, where does the South? Where?
No, dude. Go down to South Carolina, dude. It's like Iceland versus Greenland. You out of your mind? Jesus Christ.
Yeah, you're like 10 miles from South Carolina right now.
Are we really?
South, yeah.
Oh, wow. Okay, so we are
real
the
close.
South.
Yeah.
When people get defensive about it here. We're listening to the Civil War book.
Right.
We were going to talk about that like 30 minutes ago. I forgot about the Civil War book.
So we're hour 6 in, not anywhere near the Civil War.
Haven't even gotten to the Civil War. No, we're still on the prices of cotton.
Yeah.
Wow.
Literally.
Okay.
We're now at all the
Deep
economic
dive.
reasons why shoemakers strike. That's the one I
The
took
shoemaker
out of
strike.
it.
Yeah, a lot of the book is us
Wow.
trying to retain a single piece of information from it while we drive. And so, like, in the beginning, we were like, this is going to be so exciting. We're going to learn. We're going to be really smart. And he's like, all right, so listen, cotton was 70 cents a pound. Then it went up to 80 cents a pound. Do you understand what that did, you fucking idiot? And I'm like, yeah, I know. And he's like, all right, good. Beef tack was more pricey. And you're like, oh, how did this make slaves? you're trying to hold on to it.
Jesus.
But it is really interesting. But they talk about... Dude, I can't summarize this. This is exactly what we talked about. I would try to describe the book, and I'd be like,
And make a
oh,
fool
listen,
out of yourself,
the
you will.
shoemakers had a strike, so then we had to fight each other for 6 years.
Oh my.
But also he just does a lot of names and,
Yeah.
dates and little
But the way
town
they speak.
names and things. It's a
way-
beautifully written book.
Yeah.
I actually don't remember the name of this book. Now I make a fool out of myself.
The way they speak, though, it's what's lost to time. It's the coolest shit ever. Politicians don't speak like that anymore. All politicians are pussies, and they're all corrupt. And back then, they were dueling each other. One of them would be like, sir, I will not trade tobacco to you. And he'd be like, duel. And they would just shoot each other. And this one guy, he got shot 3 times. He kept doing it.
Yeah, I actually feel like I know who you're talking about. I'm not going to remember. Oh my God, I know who you're talking about. All right, anyway.
There is a guy who he also invaded Nicaragua 4 times, and every time he would go back to the South, and they'd be like, yeah, go get him, and he'd be like, I'm getting troops, and then they would leave, and then he'd like crash the boat into a log, and he had to come back, and then they'd be like, we'll do it again, and then by the 4th time, they were like, dude, fucking, where's Nicaragua?
Maybe.
Like, where are we going with this? But it is fascinating, because it's mostly about how, like, the South had, basically, their whole economy was buying land, needing slaves for the land, reinvesting that in land, and reinvesting that in slaves. But then they exported all of the raw materials to the north to be produced, which came back to them. So they were basically just exporting raw materials and had no industry of their own.
I was going to say, which ultimately was their downfall. Yeah, with the lack of industry.
Yeah, and it made them. It starts with like the Mexican-American War and how we expanded too fast with that, and then that required more slaves, and then the South being like, look, we like fought most of this war. We're on the border.
Right.
Now we have to do this. So then America got really expansionist, and we wanted all these random places like Nicaragua, and then we wanted Cuba really bad. Yeah. But yeah, then they start doing the names, and it just goes on. But they'll do the quotes, and they're just so cool. They'll just be like, when the dawn is darkest, I promise you the mare's the brightest, and if I have to die on this hill by the oak above me, my father. And then you have nowadays, and Trump's just like, fucking gay people are bad. And they're like it was just so much better. You get so riled up. Yeah. I've never felt more patriotic than listening to the Civil War book. I'm like, I gotta make this right.
Yeah, you're right. It is different. It's different. That's how I always felt about writers too. Like throughout history, there was like ups and downs. Like sometimes writers were like the dainty little like lords. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? They were wimps, and then there was like times where it was Lord Byron swam the English Channel, and he was like the total badass. He did it with half a foot. Yeah. Then you get guys like Hemingway who just drink and fight, and all the World War II sort of writers that came out of that were like just crazy badass. It's just, I think politicians kind of falls into that too, where there's times where they were sort of wimpy, and then times they were these poetic fighters. You know,
you hate to do the hard times, make hard men quote, but yeah, World War I produced some really good authors, and I'm writing a book right now. I'm getting close to being done with the first draft.
Wow.
But
impressive.
Yeah, then I listen to like Hemingway, and then I write my silly little book, and I'm like, oh, I'm such a fucking loser. Oh, fuck. And I'll tell her, I'm like, I'm basically Hemingway, and she's like, you're basically an alcoholic. That's about it.
That's Hemingway actually.
That was him, but I didn't do all the fighting and the bullfights, and thankfully I don't own a shotgun. So
I ran with the bulls a couple years ago.
Did you? In Spain?
In Spain, yeah, Pamplona.
How was it?
It was terrifying. Yeah.
Do you have to pay, or you just jump?
No, you just
hop
go,
in that fucker.
You go in, yeah. You go in. You have a certain time frame that you can go in. It's like early in the morning. And then they walk through and like with the authorities, and they chip. Essentially, they're just looking for people who have weapons or if they're drunk. If you're drunk, dude, they pull you out.
Who isn't drunk,
dude? Nobody is drunk. That's the thing. You think that's the party starts after. If you're drunk, like you are going to die.
I think that makes sense because I am an aggressive. I'm a cocksure drunk. And so, 100%, I'd be on the side and I'd be like, "You think a fucking bull's gonna chase you down? You thought you fucking pussy?" And I'd hop in there and slip, be like, "Oh fuck!"
Dude, I can only describe the feeling in that, like, the moments before they're really they fire cannons off when you know that the bulls have left the paddocks, and then they fire it again when they're officially in the streets and running people over. It's very sobering. People are there stretching, quiet. It is quiet.
Well, it's cultural.
It's a little bit of it's just. I mean, I think everyone's nervous and knows this is no bullshit. Like you can like run up the fencing and get out, but it's like you only have the whole thing is like 2 minutes long, man. It is like it happens and it happens really.
Do people
fast
get killed?
It hasn't happened in a while, but people get hurt really bad. And by the way, it's usually Americans.
I'm sure.
Yeah, no one's surprised by that. Yeah, they have like there are certain rules. Like there's guys who do it every year that are like these professional guys, and they have newspapers. And if you have like the most sort of masculine thing is to run by the bull and hit it with the newspaper. That's sort
like
of
like an Italian woman does to their child.
yeah, or a shoe. Yeah, there's guys who are like kind of I'll call them professional, but they do it every year, and they're sort of their praise of people are all up in the thing. They walk through with, the mayor of the town, and I think the country people come through, and there's police and politicians, and they walk through. So you're in there, and they all walk by you, and
it's kind of. I mean, speaking, I was reading The Sun Also Rises, and when they go to the bullfights, they're held as stars.
So
definitely.
The whole appeal of this to participate in something like this is it kind of like climbing Everest, like to feel alive for those 2 minutes.
Totally makes sense to me. And again, I did it about a year or two before I had my hip replaced, so I wasn't exactly in tip-top shape. So I will say that I found me and my friend went, and we did it twice, actually. We did it 2 days in a row. They do it for, I think, 7 or 8 days. And there's a couple things about it that I didn't know about, but so one was we found the widest part of the route just because I'm like, I need to be in a place where I can sort of just get as far away from the bulls as possible. My other friend, who's a pretty athletic dude, was like, yeah, I want to be able to get into the arena, which I didn't know about. The whole thing is you run with the bulls, and then you get into an arena, and then the bull is in there with like 100 people, probably more. And then the bulls run around and try to get people, and you try to get their attention and get out of the way of them. And then when that bull gets tired, they kind of eschew it out, and they bring another one in. And then so there's cause for the next 20, 30 minutes, if I remember correctly, is new bulls come in, and bulls run and flip people in the air and jam people up, and yeah. And if I'm not mistaken, in the arena, I think they put things on their horns so they're not super sharp, and they may do it with the runs now. I think 50 years ago, it was like you were gonna get gored and you're gonna die.
That's right. You can't put things on the bulls. If you make the conscious choice to run from a bull, just deal with it's not like you have to do it. When you were saying people are getting nervous or starting to stretch, I was like, they know they don't have to do it, right? You don't have to get in there.
Yeah.
Just don't do it.
Totally.
It's like there's this island in Greece. So I lived in Greece for many years, for 10 years. And there's this island, Tinos, which is the center for Orthodox faith. And they have a massive cathedral in the center on the hill because they found some sort of a holy icon and, built a thing. And so when I arrived for the first time, I noticed some women running right outside of the ferry boat with flowers and stuff and crazy running. So, and then, I saw some cars parked. I thought, how romantic, they run to meet their lover, already have the flowers for some reason. And then as soon as you get out of the port, there's this massive, massive road that goes all the way to the cathedral, and it's carpeted. And then I see women and men crawling on their fours all the way up to the cathedral. Wow. And apparently it's like if you desire something, a healing, a healing of a relative or, whatever it is, then by the time you make it to the cathedral, apparently your wish will be granted by the god and by the holy icon woman. Wow. But what surprised me with this is kind of what you were saying with the bull. They carpeted a part of the road because it's, it's brick road. And so they carpeted it. And then I saw some women wearing knee pads as well.
Kind of takes away from
yeah. And it's like, how bad do you really want this? Don't you think,
Yeah. You don't have bloody knees coming out of this. Did you really want this to happen?
I thought that's the whole point.
Yeah. Right.
We've gotten too soft as a nation.
As a world, I think, actually.
Nobody's sacrificed. Well, there's some countries.
The whole world got knee padded.
I bet there's a lot of countries where people are growing up and they're like, I wish we would tone things down.
Yeah.
Just a slight amount.
Yeah. It was, I will say that it was, I can only describe it as what I think people who've ever jumped out of an airplane. The rest of the day, you feel like you could do anything. That's kind of how I was after the bull running. I was like, this is crazy.
So what did you do?
He did it again.
Oh, yeah, we did it again.
No, I mean at that day that you felt you could
drank.
do it.
We drank.
Yeah, that's what you did.
It was basically they record the whole thing, and then everyone just goes to they open up the paddocks that are blocking off the street, and then everything's a bar, and then there's parades that come through, and it's like an old part of the city. So it's, narrow streets, 3-4 stories high. Everything's a bar. People are literally bringing their tables and stuff out in the street. Families are just literally like a parade's going on. They're having their lunch with this big celebration. It was amazing, absolutely amazing. I tell anybody to go do it.
I don't think my ego would do it. I think I would get too ramped up. I think I would. First of all, I would absolutely drink before. There's no way, and the cops would never know. They simply wouldn't know. I'm Irish.
It was 7 a.m. I think
that's when it starts.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I wouldn't do it because I wouldn't wake up that early. That's basically. I would get up, I would do it, but then like if I did it drunk, I'd try to fight the bull. That's for sure. And I'd probably just be like, look,
And you'll talk to it too.
I'd be like, they're more afraid of you. They're first of all.
Yeah, they're about 1,400 pounds a piece, and there's about a dozen of them.
Look, dude, I deadlift about 425. So I mean, like that fucking bull.
You know what the scariest part is? The people. So it is. You saw World War Z. All it is it's 100 people who are running, looking over their shoulders.
You get trampled by people.
That's how most people get hurt. There's two things I say: if you're running and you fall, is stay down. Don't try to get back up. Don't lift your head. It's stay down, cover your head, because you're going to get trampled if you fall. And if your head is up, someone's either going to kick you in the head or the bull's going to get your head. If you stay down and cover up, you'll probably survive. The second time I got a little more aggressive, and I was like fighting like 30 people around me is what was happening. Everyone's running and bumping into you, so I'm literally like throwing people, like I'm just fighting for my life.
You were killing people. You were throwing them in front of a bull.
And they were doing the same to me. We were all just fighting. And for me, all I was trying to do was seeing where the bulls were. And this is all in a, the second cannon goes off. I had like a minute and a half before these bulls were going to come running by. And so you see the people running before you see the bulls. So you see this massive wall of people running at you, and you start kind of trotting, and you're like, all right, get out of my way. Where's the bull? I don't want it to surprise, and all of a sudden it's right behind me, kind of a thing. Yeah, it was like pretty wild. And it was all very fast, and then they go by, and you're just like, holy shit. And you just try to run till you get into the gate. Eventually they close the arena gates, and you can't get through the tunnel anymore.
Has the bull ever decided just not run?
I don't know.
Just walks out?
I think if nobody ran, people just stood there, the bull will kind of be like,
Maybe.
okay.
Yeah, maybe.
It'd be the great peace finally. Everyone's like, I'm not interested. And the bull's like, that's
Fair.
it for me.
Well, they have two, I want to say 2 or 4 maybe of these. They're not Brahma bulls, but they're like not the bulls that are like that. So these bulls that run are going to go and fight and die, essentially.
Yeah, they never lose. They never win the fight, huh?
No, not that I know of.
No.
Let me rephrase that. I don't know the answer to that. I don't know because the bulls are so damaged by the time they really get in there with the matador that I think they're pretty much done anyway. It's pretty.
Did you watch them? Did you watch them?
No,
take
I
the
refused.
bull down?
I wouldn't do that. No.
Oh, that's where you drew the line?
Absolutely, yeah.
you
Absolutely.
You ran in the street and threw a bunch of Spaniards out on the cobblestone.
Yes.
You ran away from this bull that was panicking, and you're like, I stop at the arena. I'm going to go get hammered.
Yes, that is 100% what I do.
Yeah, 100%.
I don't. Well, here's my take on that. I don't agree with
ate
it.
a cheeseburger while you
Yes,
were back at
that's
the bar?
actually very much probably what I did. A lot of ham anyway. Jamon. Yeah, I don't want to see that. Listen, it's not a tradition that I'm going to stop. So, what's my protest going to do?
Listen, guys, slow down. Right?
Just maybe let this thing live in a field somewhere. What do we think about that?
Does anyone have an open mic around here?
I didn't do any there. I went to Barcelona and I did an open mic in Barcelona.
How'd it go?
It was fun. It was so much fun. It was an English speaking one specifically, and there was about 8 of us on the show. And everyone was from a different country. So there was 8 people from 8 different countries, and we all hung out for the rest of the night, and it was amazing.
Did you ever see stand-up?
It was so cool.
In Europe?
No.
Other than your president? Was he actually a stand-up comedian? What's the deal with him?
He wasn't a stand-up comedian. In the early 90s, there was this show, which was like a nationwide comedy show.
Yeah, this is what I was,
Yeah,
It's
and
like
so
Ukraine's Got Talent, something like that, right?
not this. It was called the Club
Who's the
of.
fastest bottle collector?
It was
like, whoa!
It was called KVN, which is an abbreviature. Is it the
Abbreviation.
That's right. And it stands for the Club of the Funny and Inventive. So it started back in the day, and so it was going around the whole nation, not just Ukraine, but like Russia and Kazakhstan and you name it.
Right.
Ural mountain groups. And it's never just you. It's usually a group of people, and then they have their own
laughing
little
at?
sketches.
I just can't imagine.
Everything I say about Ukraine, he just makes fun of
I
it.
can't imagine who's the funniest person from the Ural Mountains.
They actually had a very good team. I remember that as a 5-year-old. Made me
They were
laugh.
like 5 hands, 4 utters on goat. Whoa, 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 whoa.
But again, you gotta imagine, right? It's being broadcasted on the national TV, so
Right.
it's extremely censored. And
yeah.
it's interesting, even like watching the old movies from the old comedy movies from USSR, like from the 60s and 70s. As a child, I thought it was such a wonderful place because of the language they use, and like they projected the morale of the nation so wildly different than what it was. Like no swearing,
Right.
only kind jokes.
No
People are
beating your
kind
wife.
to each other. Yeah. So the comedy that they did was also pretty regimented and censored. But then he had his own show in Ukraine on the national channel, prime time, Saturday evening, 8 p.m. for like 2 hours. And they would do little skits of little sketches of politicians, the current politics. So they will make fun of all the politics, and he would always play the president or the
Political
prime
comic.
minister.
I didn't know. That makes sense now.
But then you would think, who would allow them to do that?
Yeah, right.
So all of them were sponsored, and there's a big conspiracy that was going on when he got elected, because he would also play a lot one oligarch whose name is Kolomoisky. He's the guy who owns the national airlines of Ukraine, and he's from the next town to the one where I grew up. And so he would also portray him a lot because he's like this dishonest person. And then when he got elected, the whole stories were going on that this oligarch was the one who gave him the money in the first place to become the president. And I mean, I'm not surprised with anything,
Yeah.
to be honest, in
I
Ukraine.
mean, I wouldn't be here either. I used to think there was a big difference between other countries and their the conspiracies and the corruption and all that. And I was so naive to think that, well, that doesn't happen here. It is at some point. I'm like, I'm like 35. No, it's younger than that. But it was definitely a moment. I was like, oh, we're actually the best at it.
Yeah.
We just hide it better than everybody else.
We're just
we
funnier.
used to anyway. Yeah.
I mean, it's on a bigger stage. We need to go back to the duels. I'm telling you, I'm listening to the Civil War book, and these people had passion.
They had honor, I think. That's what
did have
differentiates us from people back then.
And they didn't have
There was
TikTok.
something to die for and fight for. Nowadays, what you gonna fight for? Like,
Yeah.
I think porn did that. It's too easy to jack off. You needed to fight. Women love honor, and back in the day, you had to ride your
Another hard
horse.
swing there.
You had to get on a horse for 7 weeks to find a woman that shaved. So you were going, and you got to beat another man to death for it. I think and women were strong and independent too. I'm gonna get in front of that one right there.
Right. Is there something to be said about the idea of like the U.S. right now is the youngest son of a rich man, right?
Yeah.
Is it the grandson? It's like once it becomes so easy, your life is so easy that you don't have the same character and qualities that you had of the generation or two before you.
I think it's also. I mean,
right? Isn't that story? It was like my grandfather drove a this, then I drove a this, my grandson drives that.
I get that part. I honestly think and this could go on for so long. We don't have to do it, but no, it's where global capitalism has us today. Our form of capitalism requires rampant growth at the expense of people, and that's true. That's not a socialist take. That's literally how our capitalist system works.
Mm-hmm.
It's when you have a fiduciary duty to a company, your job is to grow, and there's nothing else.
Right.
So wages are stagnant.
So where does that
wages
stop?
below? Yeah, and
totally.
so a lot of it was actually, I was reading something the other day about how we never really turned back from that after 9/11. Like you have the 90s. The 90s are pretty much like an average lack of tumult time. You have maybe Desert Storm, and from a comedy standpoint, that's one of the perspectives of why Seinfeld did so well, is comedy about nothing. You didn't need edgy political commentary like you had with Carlin. You had the 80s of just kind of like, actor type people and boom and bust in the economy. After 9/11, you have a complete shattering of who you are as a nation. Then the Patriot Act comes in. The recession hits in 2008. And now people are in debt more than they've ever been. And then after COVID, you had the single greatest transition of wealth in human history. And the greatest wealth disparity in the States since the Gilded Age.
Wow.
But now you don't have politicians that are union busting. We just don't have it. You don't have a Teddy Roosevelt. The Fed just increased mortgage rate loans to like 8% with 2.25 points up front. If you want to Google what that means, you probably don't own a home, just like me. So, then that is that general malaise. I think people have never been, I shouldn't say that. This would be an ignorant statement. People are very overworked right now. And when, people get criticized in certain communities for what people perceive as like ignorant voting, I think they forget that they might be working 50-hour weeks with 3 children, barely able to keep food on the table. And after all of that, when your public schools have been defunded and you couldn't afford higher education because that's been overpriced, you come home and you have 3 TV stations of people screaming at you with headlines, plus the internet feeding you thoughts.
Telling you who to hate.
How are you
at fault? Yeah.
How are you supposed to make a creative thought? How are you supposed to do critical thinking?
Yeah,
it's very privileged.
Yeah, on top, yes, exactly. On top of that, it's like all the misinformation and all these different outlets to get this information. It's like, it's a lot to ask.
It's overwhelming.
Of citizens. Yeah.
It's overwhelming, and the community I'm from in Cleveland, my counties, she's managed to hear about all this just incidentally, but horrible overdose history.
Yeah.
I'm 31. I just remember another one today between suicide and overdose, over 11 people that have died in my life. That's way too many.
Yeah, for sure.
So we have a war on drugs with Mexico that's destroyed their nation because they're a completely failed economy until they can get rid of cartels. They can't until that's settled. Pharmaceutical companies price that in. They got fined. That's still happening. So I think that's a bigger problem. Is it's weak because people have been really ground into a pulp, and then you're faced with doom and gloom every day, which is the realities of climate change are affecting communities. They affect finances. You can't even get housing insurance in Florida coast. You can't get it in California. Then you have politics, which everyone's like, we know it's a sham, and I don't know what to do about it. So you just pick a side.
Well, here's one of the things that I've noticed more than ever is we're hearing a lot of people say what the problems are. There's a lot of people on all different sides who are talking about this is what the problem is. Nobody knows how to fix literally any of the things that you've just talked about. No one is coming in going, well, here's what we got to do.
I think they do. I think the people, we don't have power over it. In the Civil War book, they go into a chapter about wage slavery, where basically at the time prior to industrialization, they worked job to job. You completed a job, you got paid. Wage slavery meant you had to be at the place for, 40, 50 hours a week. And the people were basically rioting, like the shoemakers. They were like, what are you talking about? I'm a skilled laborer. I do my job and I go home. They had like their 3 drinks of the day. They were drinking like lunch, evening, and then night. They're like, that's kind of what we do. So why am I here all day? And that's kind of what we're pushed back into is it's this idea that you stay in one place, you can't afford shit, you have to work those 40 hours a week, and you're producing wealth. And because there is no union busting, you have CEOs that are filtering everything, making $25 million a year. And then minimum wage is defined as the wage that is required to make cost of living. But you have to have 2 jobs at minimum wage. So that's no longer minimum wage.
Right.
So,
totally.
Yeah.
But again, my point is like, we know that.
Right.
I don't think people know how to fix it. I don't know if people don't know how to fix the system that currently exists. I think even the fact that Biden wants to relieve some pressure from people who are paying too much in college and getting their asses kicked by that complete sham of a system is getting pushback from better than half the country saying, don't do that. That's a terrible financial. So it's like even the smallest thing is getting pushback from everybody else. So I'm saying I don't think they don't know how to fix it, or no one's willing to actually change any of these systems.
Oh, here's the easiest. It's because they have no incentive. The first step is removing super PACs. Remove super PACs.
100%,
if you can't see where the money is going to a politician, then that should be done day one. 2, every senator should be limited to $180,000 a year in salary and nothing else, and they should not be able to trade stocks.
And I totally agree. Especially that last part, and also an age limit. I'm sorry.
Oh no, of course an
age limit is insane.
This is ridiculous. Mitch McConnell made over $2 million a year in his 10 years as a congressman. His salary is $145,000 a year. So either he's the single most clever investor that's ever been, or something else is happening.
Yeah.
Dianne Feinstein just died at 90 fucking years old, sitting on $80 million. She had like one eye open the whole time. She doesn't know how to use a phone. How is she voting on anything?
Yeah, it's
that's
crazy.
Insanity.
It really is. It's bananas.
Yeah,
it's
politicians are supposed to be in office because they care about the people.
Yeah.
Politicians are in office because they care about money. It's the easiest job in the world. There's a book called Dark Money, which is basically about this, but it's the easiest job in the world. You get in there, it's a boys' club. And the moment you get in there, you're told what to do. Here's your money. Here's who you're friends with. They all golf on the weekends. They don't give a shit. John Boehner was golfing with Obama on Sundays.
Yeah, right.
Like, nobody cares. They're all laughing you behind your back. And if you do go in there with good intentions, you're destroyed. So that's the problem, is the people who have the keys to the castle don't have any incentive to change the fucking lock.
They're never going to change it.
I just made that up on the spot. I'm going to clip that, baby.
Brian's like, God damn. Good job, buddy.
No, I get politically very, very frustrated, and it made me kind of check out mentally. This is I don't.
Oh yeah, I don't get it, but I don't talk about any of this shit. I don't talk politics. This is the most anyone's ever gotten me to talk about politics on it, especially to be recorded. I don't, because.
But you didn't make a hard stand. Everything you said is very reasonable.
Yeah, I know how I feel about everything, but I don't necessarily feel any grand need to tell anybody else how I feel. I agree. I think kind of unique in that, in so much where it's like it's not going to do any good. Anyone knowing how I feel or where I lean or whatever I do, it's not going to do anybody any good. It's only going to be bad. I avoid it completely. It's emotional intelligence as far as I'm concerned.
Yeah.
I'm not getting into that.
I think the only political discussion I have is when you vent frustration at the system as a whole. It's like if you hardline for either party, I think you've lost the plot because they're totally so much closer and they're laughing at you. And every time you put that sign in your front yard and you vote, if you think that senator gives a shit about you or your family, unless you make over $250,000 a year, then you're kidding yourself. You're shooting yourself in the foot.
There was a choice in the Ukrainian voting bulletin back in the day. I think they changed it the past few presidents, but there was a choice in the end that was against all, which my parents always chose that one, and the percentage was pretty high every year. It was like 8% of the population was just because, to choose between the two evils.
More than Perot got. That's amazing.
Deep cut right there. That's an old man American political joke. Ross Perot.
That's great. I love that they have that. Is that for the humor of it?
No, I think it's
they
just
have no sense of humor in their country. No. Have you seen their best fucking comedian?
Was he from the Ural Mountains?
Yeah.
By the way, all my geography of that part of the country I know from the game Risk. That's the only reason that I know
Isn't it
that.
Not accurate in Risk? Usually they use like that old map.
Yeah, I think it's.
What is
but
this
I know
game?
that the Urals are there.
They're way there.
Yeah. On the game.
Oh, the mountains?
On the game I'm talking about.
I've never played this game. What is this game?
Risk?
I've never played it.
It's what the U.S. plays with your country.
Yeah. It's a game of world domination.
Yeah, which we always win. It's funny, too, because random countries that mean nothing in the real world, guys, I'm going to watch that statement.
Jeez.
I didn't name any countries, guys.
But you stopped short of calling them bullshit. What is it? What was it?
Yeah,
piece of shit country.
But in the like Kamchatka is very important in that game.
Yeah, right.
Kamchatka growing up is a 20% vodka that you drink out of a plastic bottle, and it's also that area. It's a beautiful area of Russia on the eastern end.
It's far north.
I thought it was on the farthest part of the east. I know where Kamchatka is because I played Rich.
It's northeast.
Kamchatka is how you invade.
It's the last
North
part
America.
before Japan. Kamchatka, and then I think.
Well, Japan's down here. Kamchatka's up here.
Yeah, then
Brian, you getting my geography on this one? This is public school education here. Kamchatka's here, and Japan is here.
You're gonna take a ferry and you go.
I was just reading some stories about Japan last night too.
Oh yeah, what did you retain?
I get stoned at night and then I read like the collapse news stories about the world. So like when things are going bad in other countries, and then I sit there wide-eyed and I'm like, I gotta get a farm.
Have you all read 1776 since you're into history?
No, it's one of the ones that I need to show. We probably should have started with that because I'm literally not kidding you. 6 hours in, I don't even know. I think we're still in the Ice Age. We're not close to the Civil War.
No, we are already at the point where
they're about
the fugitive slaves law. That's where we are.
That's a big tipping that's very interesting is, the South.
There was one city, I don't remember which one it was, that they hid.
Boston.
Boston was it. Yeah. They hid a few people.
It's funny because if you know anything about Boston...
There's some irony there.
Yeah. The past 100 years, they flipped on it, but anyway. They got it right one time.
Terrible.
Yeah, it was a big point. It's like the slaves escaped to the North, and the North harboring them, and then the federal government steps in, I think, under Johnson or someone, who's or Van Buren. And he's like, no, you got to take them back to the South so the slave hunters come up, and that's big tension.
Oh, they allowed extradition.
Yes, but they were like kind of bounty hunters. So what would happen is sometimes they'd come to get them, and then the abolitionists and free blacks would take the slaves and basically like lock the courthouse or hide them in their homes, and then
they'll start getting armored as well.
Oh. Yeah,
and that's really what scared the South a little bit.
But because then the president,
a lot of it,
who supports the South, and he ends up setting like the National Guard in, and so that now they're like in an ultimatum part of it where the South is like, you better allow us to have slaves, and but they're like super pro slavery.
So this actually pushed into the war.
Well, we don't know yet.
We don't know. We haven't finished the chapter yet.
Listen to me. Cotton was expensive. I know the prices went up and everything went to shit. The shoemakers were upset. And then we bought Kansas and we tried to invade Cuba. Nicaragua 4 times. Yeah, that's what we're gathering from that. Should have done fucking Harry Potter in that car.
Well, if that I know about, that I can talk to you about, but
I don't get Harry Potter adulthood. I was into it as a kid. Brian, what timestamp are we at?
1:19.
I mean, it's 7.
Yeah.
Do we have to go soon?
That show's starting now, so we'll split.
Okay, we should probably do that.
Next 15.
What do you want to plug other than your name, which we never introduced? Because I don't.
Oh yeah, we didn't even do that. I'm Jason Allen King. Yeah, that's right.
I just like to riff.
That's a cool name,
Brian.
Jason Allen King.
Jason
your
Allen
Instagram.
King. So I'm Jason Allen King on everything. On Instagram, it's King Jason Allen. But if you type in Jason Allen King, I think I'm at the top there. Yeah, JasonAllenKing.com. Yeah, ALLEN. Yeah, I'm kind of when will this come out? I mean, who cares? I mean, I'm kind of all over the place. Yeah,
a week. But I mean, your podcast is forever.
Yeah. The Comedy Zone podcast. Brian Baltashevitz, who's sitting over here, is the producer. He's on it with me and Kevin Shimko, and yeah, it's great. It's about 8 years old as a podcast, nice. And I've had the reins for a couple years now. And yeah, so check that out for sure. Everywhere you listen to podcasts, and yeah, watch my stuff on social media, and let's get me to 3,000 followers. Wouldn't that be nice?
Have you considered being a hot girl?
I have not.
Well, it's 2023, Jason. So
I just want to tour with one. Actually, that's all I want to do.
Some of them do need a comedian on board. So I have friends who are hot girls. You're doing great on TikTok, and you're very funny. No, there's a million. They're funnier than me often. It'll probably be out in like a week. But what we want to do is, if we don't have time this week, which sounds like unfortunately we might not, the next time you have a few shows, come back and do what we did with San Luis Obispo, which is follow y'all around. Some other cool comics, interview, talk, chat. Maybe this weekend, if we have time to chat with people, would be cool.
Totally. Maybe we'll do it at the Comedy Zone or something like that.
I would love to do the Comedy Zone.
Let's
shout out Comedy Zone.
Heck yeah.
That's pretty much. Lisa, do you want to say anything to the people?
No. Nothing.
She votes no to all of the people.
Against all sayings.
Against all.
And Jason did answer this. I do ask everyone. Brian, what's your opinion on Israel and Palestine?
I don't even know where they are.
Wonderful. All right. Not the first time we've gotten that answer.
Okay.
All right. Well, insert town here, Charlotte edition. Jason Allen King. Appreciate your time.
Thank you, buddy.
Lisa.
Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you.
Thanks for.
Fun.
You're always with me, so that was fun. All right. Thank you, Brian. Woo! It was good. Thanks.
No, are you kidding? That was a blast.
They go too fast, man.